So, to the good stuff. I'm just going to close that off before it shuts my screen down. Why do we observe the game? So we do this to help your players as a team, as a unit, and as an individual. Really, really focused on the individual. To support player development and to improve performance to aid player development. Now, I think we're all fairly comfortable with understanding what we mean by player development. But improving performance to aid player development is maybe something that you've not come across before. So I just want to explain that a little bit. There may be times during games where we need to observe and address issues that are occurring that might lead to a poor development experience for players. So that can be things such as getting beaten badly. And I understand we can't always do anything about that necessarily. But getting beaten badly or a really poor matchup on the day. So a player X is matched up against an opposition player and it's a really, really tough experience on that day. And actually, that might begin to have a negative impact on them on the day. So that player is suffering. So they're just a couple of examples where we may need to amend or we may have observed things that we need to change to help improve performance to aid player development. So I just wanted to bring that to life a little bit. But essentially, the big thing is we observe the game to help individuals within our group and also the unit and the team and the wider squad. So things to consider when we are observing matches. What is your playing philosophy? How do we want our team to play football? And that's on and off the ball, in and out of possession, because this will shape what we as coaches look for when we observe our players. So they're the lenses we'll put on when we're observing our players. We need to define what success and failure looks like. And I'm hoping that within the room, we've got quite a high proportion of grassroots coaches. And I think making it a safe, fun and engaging environment is probably top of our agenda. So what does success and failure look like? Because again, that will shape how you observe and how you feed back to players. Make notes when you're observing. And this is something I always forget to do and then find myself scrambling around when I actually then want to get points across. So it's always easier to remember when you write things down. And don't be afraid to have a clipboard, a notepad and jot down. Don't feel like, oh, well, the parents are going to think I'm not paying attention. Those moments where you do kind of bleed your thoughts out onto the page, that's going to be the information that you can use to feed back to players. So it's vital that you do take notes throughout matches. Work as a team. I've put on there. See the one we did last time, coaching as an effective team. We talked loads about how we can share roles, but it's like note taking. Observing players can be shared. It can be a shared responsibility. Different coaches can watch different areas of the pitch or even different individuals or units, and then you can feedback centrally as a group. And we see that as really, really good practice because it means that we're observing a wider kind of focus. So work as a team. Oh, I've clicked on, sorry. Consider your emotions. Again, something I can be guilty of. Sometimes my face can say a little bit too much, even though I'm trying not to do it, but my face might say a little bit too much. But when we are observing, consider your body language. And if you go on to the creating environment workshop we did a couple of months ago, there's loads on that there. But just bear in mind, you as a coach, you're more likely to remember events filled with emotion, such as a mistake leading to a goal. You weren't online, but for the last 20 minutes, I've been talking to Brent about some emotional moments from our tournament yesterday. And they're the things I've told him about. I haven't told him about the other stuff. So the emotional ones, emotional bits, they will stick in your mind. That doesn't mean that they're the thing that we should focus on. And secondly, within that, your view will get distorted if you do get too heavily invested in a game. So always take a moment before feeding back to players. It'll help you be more objective and it'll help you be more development minded. So something that I've done over the last couple of years is always taken a couple of minutes with my co-coach to kind of step away from the players. We have a chat, we get the stuff off our chest, come up with a strategy. This is what we're going to talk about. And then we go and speak to the players to try and keep our emotions in check. And then this one is a challenge. So staying focused. There's so much going on. It is impossible for us to take it all in, especially if you're by yourself or in a two. So having a clear focus is really important on a match day. Trying to keep things simple for you and your players by linking back to things like training, the targets you worked on at last week's training session, and then observing them against that criteria rather than trying to observe everything all in one go. Okay, so just want to go in a little bit deeper on staying focused. So it's easy to be ball focused. A good observer spends time looking around the ball and away from the ball. So the picture there is a swarm of bees chasing the ball around, and it's easy to focus in on that and not necessarily look around the ball or look even further away from that. So there'll be times to observe individuals, units, teams, and having the ability to focus on that and not just where the action looks like it's taking place takes real concentration. So we have to train ourselves to look away from the ball. Okay, developing your observation skills. This is like any football skill or technique. We need to train this. This is something that has to be worked on and practiced by ourselves. So the more you can find ways to take yourself away from ball watching, the more you can start to notice about the game, and you'll start to notice patterns. So the photo on the screen there, you'll start to see formations forming and units and teams, and you'll then start to notice the patterns, the flow, the shapes and the trends that are coming out in games. And actually, the more you get into this, you do find, and I don't know if Brent's the same, you do find yourself sometimes enjoying live matches a little bit less because you start watching it like a coach, and you sometimes lose a bit of that emotion of just watching the ball and cheering your team on. But it is a bit of a bug. Once you start, you can't stop observing it and seeing the patterns that are unfolding at any given game. Okay, so a question to think about. What do you think a coach needs to notice on a match day? Okay, so we're going to now put a clip on. We'd like you to watch the following clip, observe the team. What do you notice? So what I want you to do is pick a team that you're managing. So there's not many under 10s games that are freely available on the internet. So we've got Liverpool against, I don't know, Liverpool under 10s from 6-7 years ago. Pick a team to manage, observe the clip, watch it. What do you notice? So here we go. Peps or Brent, just give me a thumbs up if the video is coming through. Thank you. The clip's around 2 minutes long, so plenty of time. If you want to write notes, feel free. The sound is out of sync. I had to use a dodgy YouTube downloader, so the sound is not quite synced. So that isn't your internet. That should be us any second. Should stop any moment now. There we go. Okay. So there was 2 minutes of a 7v7 fixture, Liverpool under 10s against, I'm not sure who that is. So we don't often do this, but we are going to use the chat function now. And if you want to contribute, if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But fire off a few bits. What did you look for? What did you notice? Where did you look? Any ideas? So like I said, there's no pressure to do so, but if you can, if you'd like to, can you pop some things in the chat? What did you look for? What did you notice about the game? Again, thinking with a coach's hat, where did you look? Any suggestions? Okay, good, strong start. I like it. John, you've got your hand up. Is that
Oh.
because you want to talk, or is that?
If it's easy for me to type it in, I'll type it in.
If you could type it in, I want to try and collate all the bits so we can pick them off. Thank you. Okay, so we've got some good stuff coming in. So high press from the blue team, team shape. This is the one problem with Microsoft Teams. The chat box is in the same space that the notifications come up. So we were looking for the shape of the team, Dave Barker. Available players, players in space, like it. Everything went forward. So we're looking at how the teams were playing, sort of their philosophy, their mindset. I like it. Look for what the team was doing. High press, formations, movement of the ball from Heather, spatial awareness. Definitely. Sure, I bet Sean's a goalkeeper coach. Look, viewed the goalkeeper, good communication and positioning. Notice they were all drilled in their positional sense. That is very interesting, something we might pick up later on. Ooh, Dave, we noticed a 2-3-1 Liverpool formation. Both teams crowded the ball, kept shape at the back, how aware of what was around them, formations. Oh, God, sorry, I'm getting too many notifications. Different formations, both team organisation behind the ball, interesting. So we're starting to think about what happens when we lose the ball and not looking directly at it. Good stuff. Notice that there was long ball, more direct down the middle. Loads of positivity. By the way, that's cracking contributions. Really good. Loads of really interesting bits there picked up. So good to hear that we were looking at the space, we were looking at the formations, we were looking at the style of how the teams are playing. Absolutely excellent. So on the next slide, what we're going to do is have a little look at something that is going to be, it's going to say simple observation method. The first one to say that it's simple to write down on paper. It's not always as simple to do. So what we hope to do with this strategy is try to kind of shift as coaches, our observation from just assessing the game or observing the game in sort of a one-dimensional view. So e.g., the opposition are quite direct or the opposition like to play out, and start to get in. And actually, there is an absolute need for that. Let's be clear. You do need to understand those kind of surface level observations. But we want to dig a little bit deeper and a little bit more deeper under the surface. Yes, whoever's sorry that's just popped up, you will get the slide deck, you will get a recording of tonight. So like I said, I say simple. This isn't that simple to do when the action and the heat of a game is going on. But this strategy was one that was taught to me by a former head of coaching where I coach now, and it stuck with me. And I really like it due to its simplicity. It keeps me on task as a coach. If I answer these questions, I can generally have a good sense of what may start to happen in the game. And it's easily applicable if you take the time to observe. So simple observation strategy. Inside the first 10 minutes of the game, try to observe the following things. And like I said, you will get this slide so you can refer back to this. You'll know your formation. What is the opposition's formation? And that may take a few minutes to unfold because at kickoff, they might not stand in it. Some teams will give you a nice clue because they'll go and stand in their formation and you can catch it before the game even starts. Some won't. Okay, so it might take a few minutes for that to make itself known. Where is your team's overload? And by overload, I mean, where on the pitch do we have more players than they have players? So a 3v1 or a 2v1, for example. Where, and on the flip of that, where are your team overloaded? Where do the opposition have more players than you do? Where is the space to attack? And where is the opposition space to attack? So where are we maybe weak? And this one you might think is slightly controversial, you may not. Who's the opposition's best player, or who are the opposition's best players? And we'll come on to a little bit later why that might be important. We've already spoken about one example of matchups can be quite important if we are looking to develop players. So where is that opposition best player? So with that in mind, you've got 2 further minutes of the Liverpool versus Blue Team game. And I'd like you to watch the following clip and try to observe the following. Now, some of you, if you've took notes, have got some of this information based on the observations that you just did. So what is the opposition formation? Where is your team's overload? Where are you overloaded? Where's the space to attack? And where's the opposition's space to attack? So here we go. Can I just double check this is coming through, Peps, Brent? Definite foul throw there for the referees in the building. So about another 20 seconds left. So again, we're looking for what the formation, the opposition are playing, where the spaces might appear, who are the strong players. Tough because the Liverpool lads aren't my numbers, to be fair. Okay. So again, utilize the chat function. What formations did you see? Where did you see the space on the pitch? And then any of the other questions that we asked. So who are the strong players? Did we see any overloads and underloads? Throw some bits into that chat. And just while you're doing that, to try and buy us a bit of time, while that is while you're populating the chat, bit of a disclaimer on this observation method. The game might not always be organized, so it can be really, really difficult to observe, especially at 5v5. So it might not always be appropriate to utilize because the game's not organized enough. And as a coach, having this sort of info, it can give you some indications of how a game might shape up, what patterns might start to become apparent, and actually sometimes help you to explain why things are going well or why they're not going well or why they're sort of in between. It can also give you clues as a coach as to how to challenge and question your players. So if we notice overloads, can we prompt our players? Can we challenge them to go, have you noticed there's an overload? What could we do with that? How could we utilize that? So it can allow us to sort of plan questions and target our coaching points. We can also use this method to sort of ensure that our players get appropriately challenged, linked to their development and confidence. And again, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail later on. So I'm just having a look at some of the stuff coming through. So we've got why players not tracking back, standard. So we've got a few formation shouts. We've got a few 2-3-1s. And again, you got 2-minute snapshot there. That's tough. Not a great camera angle necessarily to see everything. Interesting. Paul Crossy, that's a really interesting point, that because teams were keeping 2 back most of the time, they were struggling maybe with the numbers going forward. That's a really valid and interesting point that you've noticed. Good shout from Matthew around who he thought the best player was. Both wing teams had Joy, yeah. So we're indicating that there's probably space on the wings because we're getting Joy down there. Okay, interesting. So again, just to reiterate that the strategy outlined, please click back, in this one, on this slide, around trying to dig a little bit deeper under the surface. What's the opposition formations? Where's your overload? Where are you overloaded? Where's the space? And where's the opposition space to attack? To give you some sort of clues as to how the game is going to unfold and help you to coach it. Okay. So I made a few notes based on what I saw. So I think, and again, we only had 2 minutes. I think I saw 1-2-3-1s playing against each other. So I think that's what we had there. The Blues pressed really aggressively and high, which was noted in the notes. I think there was quite a bit of space down the sides, just based on the fact that we had those 2 formations playing against each other. The blue team weren't afraid to kick the ball on from the goalkeeper. The blue team generally pressed with 1 player up against Liverpool's back 2, which is something to consider. Both teams left their striker up when they were defending. Sorry, Brent, you've come off mute there. Is anything gone wrong? Sorry, I just didn't know if you were about to tell me something's gone wrong there.
So just kick me out. I'm back.
No, both teams were leaving one up and trying to keep two back. So they were just the things that I started to notice. So that might start to form some understanding of how that game might unfold. And we'll go into that in a little bit of detail later. But that strategy, for me, it was a really straightforward process for you as coaches to try and work through each game. And even if you don't act on it, and even if you're not able to go, right, I've got solutions, by observing and looking for those things, you start to build up a bit of a database for you of understanding games and seeing what patterns start to unfurl. So please do refer back to that and try and use it. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts if you do, or if you're able to go and use that this weekend. So we're going to move along. We're going to keep the flow going. We're on to formations, and I'm going to stop talking in a moment, so you will be pleased to hear that. So formations, we've already referenced them. What is a formation? It's the positioning of our players on the pitch. It's the structure of your team, essentially. And I use this analogy a lot. Formations are a lot like rock, paper, scissors. They have their strengths and they have their weaknesses. Some will kind of hurt other formations, but they have their weakness against other formations. So there isn't a one size fits all, and there's not one formation that is the best. And we'll come on to that in a moment. So they all have their own disadvantages and advantages. I'd also want to add that formations have implications for the individuals within our team, which Brent will cover. We're not going to cover 5v5 now on the stream, just because A, time, and B, what I don't want is us going away, having some 5v5 stuff and trying to micromanage 5v5 under 7 football and moving chess pieces around the pitch. But I will do a separate recording of me tomorrow or Thursday where I will cover some of the formations and stuff in that. So the principles and what we discussed, they can be adapted for 5v5 and 11v11, but we'll focus on a 7v7 and 9v9. We're giving you this info not so you can go and micromanage your players, but to help develop your understanding and help you observe and develop your players' understanding of the game. Over to Brent.
Yeah, so obviously the formations, as Tom said, it is a really a way of kind of getting your players out there to try and attack and defend. And yeah, a few things we've put on here, obviously, to consider your players, what are your individual areas of strengths and areas to improve for your players, how you want to play, and what your recent training focus has been. I think the different way you play ultimately bring out certain kind of attributes and certain key things. I know the FA talk about core moves and certainly some considerations for how your players are able to utilize their strengths on the pitch. So in terms of the formation and picking it for you, it's all about what attributes your players have got. So if you've got fast wingers, you might want to make sure you use, height, width and depth on the pitch in order to get them the spaces. I think sometimes in the past, especially at Derby, we would also have different ways of playing formations with and without the ball. So by looking at those clips, it was interesting because, I looked at that Liverpool clip there and looking at how they're playing and how do they set up when they've got the ball from a goal kick, as well as how do they set up the ball when the other team's got a goal kick and they're out of possession. So having a look at the attributes of your players is very key in terms of what will work for you, but also in terms of those individuals that you have within them. Are you trying to give someone some success? And I know we'll talk about this later in a bit more detail, but are you trying to give your players some success? Are you trying to work with players to give them a bit more of a challenge on that day? Who is it they're playing against? So, all the text in the chat box was brilliant because we don't even know anything about that team that we've played. And we've all observed 4 minutes there without any context about what the coaches have asked them to do, how they play on both sides as well. So again, these come back to your philosophy in terms of how you want your club to play, how your team plays. And like you say, a recent training focus, if you've worked on a certain formation all week, to then put them in a different one at the weekend, are they going to be prepared for that? Arguably, you say probably not. So if you're going to work on a formation with or without the ball, that's when the match comes in terms of can you bring it out and then pressurize environments against another team as well. So yeah, does one size fits all, and should you just play one formation? So you could, if we're talking 7v7, you might go for the 2-3-1 because it gives you loads of different things. two, a pair of defenders working off each other at the back, stepping in as an example. But there's going to be certain things that they get lots of in that formation that they may not get to do in others as well. So you can get really good at that, but then is it stretching the players? What happens if they come up against another team that plays in a different way than what you're used to as well? Will they be able to deal with that challenge as well? So it's all about the development, but also giving them something to work towards. Now, obviously, that's where I suppose your training plan comes in. You probably don't want to be chopping and changing from week to week, playing one formation one week, one another. And that's probably where, along with your topics, you like to block your season and say, actually, over the next 6 weeks, we're going to work on this formation because we've got these players and this is how we want to challenge them and stretch them and give them some success. And then you can obviously analyze that and see, do you continue that or do you look to give them something else? So if you have, for example, a 2-3-1, you've got the pairs at the back. So it's easy if the ball's played to one side, one will cover, one can step in. If you've got one at the back, so you're playing like 3 at the back and 2 wingers, so one defender and 2 wingers, that one may not be able to step in as much as they would in a 2. So then it has a big effect on the other players in the team as well. Formation, yeah, in new football, it is important because you're looking at the bigger game as well. So you're looking at how they're going to connect with each other in a smaller pitch in order to get loads more opportunities to be involved in the game. And that's the biggest reason why we've gone from 11v11, which we all used to play when we were 6, 7, 8, to now playing, 5v5, 7v7 and 9v9. So being able to get those pictures of what the bigger game looks like in a smaller format is really, really important for the young players as well. And then how we define positions and roles to players is key. So like we've said there, I think we said like both teams were playing like wings. You had a 2-3-1 and then you arguably had a 3-2-1 on the other team. So you've both got different types of wingers. You could argue you've got a traditional winger in the 2-3-1 up and down, but then in the 3 is it like a left wing back and right wing back. So again, that winger, wing back, defining those roles and the expected responsibilities of those players is key for one, you knowing what you want from them, but also in terms of you coaching them on the game day, in terms of what you expect to see from them as well, and them understanding what they're expected to do with the ball, without the ball, when they're near the ball, when they're away from the ball as well.
Brent, is it worth just touching on sometimes, especially with youth players, the negative connotations of I'm playing in X position and how we frame that for a player? If there may be, it is wing back and not winger, for example, how do we pitch that, or how do we define it for them?
It's interesting because looking at the clip, the first clip is initially I thought Liverpool rotated. There was a couple of players, I think it was the left wing back and the centre back rotated once in there. So that knowledge of actually he's stepping in now, I need to fill that space, it was actually quite good to see. But you will have players that you'll tend to have a lot of players that want to play up front. They want to score the goals, they want to be the glory, but ultimately you're trying to educate them on there's different players. And actually, if you use the players in the game, so for example, you're starting at the back, you're the one that kind of sets things going. So you use someone, play like a Kevin De Bruyne, he's the one that sets things up, and you use players. If you know your players, you know what team they support. And I've always found using a player that is in their team that they support really works well in terms of you've got this player in central midfielder, usually the CDM, and they all play FIFA as well. So they know today I'm going to give you a challenge around doing this, etc. And that's it. And that just because priming them and explain to them, this is kind of what you want from today. And we know you'll get to do that. Don't worry, just not today. Today, you're going to support the team in order to help them get up the pitch or to help assist goals, etc. as well.
Yeah, awesome. No, I totally agree. I think that there's always that one who's going to play at the back as well. I sometimes try and reframe that. You're going to be our ball carrier today. Just give it a different slant so they don't necessarily associate what they see as a negative. I don't want to play at the back. I don't want to defend. No, you're the ball carrier. You're the playmaker. So there's work to do there for us as coaches. Okay, so over the next 2 slides, we'll look at a variety of formations for 7s and 9s. These are from our experience, are the most commonly utilised in these formats. There are variations, but I think we would probably argue that any variations are just variations of these formations. So the ones you see are the ones that we're, from our experience, saying we've seen and we think are widely used. And the first thing you'll notice on the next slide is all the formations include the goalkeeper. So instead of it being a 2-3-1, it'll say 1-2-3-1. And that's just because we've got to make sure that the goalkeeper is part of the team and acknowledged and not apart from the team. And the other little asterisks on all of this is retreat lines. So I would just asterisk everything that we show you with. You may need to observe the game differently at goal kicks if you are playing at retreat lines, because it's something I've not had to spend a lot of time with because they didn't come in until after I stopped coaching grassroots at that age. But I've been watching my nephew just down the road from here a lot recently. So I'm getting my head around it. And it's almost like its own set play because everyone's charging from the halfway line. So there is just a little bit of context there that we just need to kind of understand in those 5v5 and 7v7 formats. So on to the 7v7 formats. We have in the top right hand corner a 1-2-3-1, which we've discussed. So a goalie, 2 centre backs, a centre mid, 2 wingers and a striker. Bottom left, we have a 1-3-1-2. So we have a back 3, a centre back and wing backs, 1 centre midfielder and 2 strikers. And then in the bottom right, goalkeeper, centre back, wing backs, 2 centre midfielders and a centre forward. So when we're considering formations, it's really important to consider how your team play in any given formation. Because as an example, a 3-2-1 or 1-3-2-1, I'm breaking my own rule, played defensively would give you 6 players, including your goalie, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players behind the ball, making you really hard to break down. But if you played that in a really attacking manner, that could actually leave you exposed at the back. I'm saying exposed by you've only got a player left at the back, exposed 1v1 really regularly. So when we look at formations and what suits us or suits our players, consider your players and the skills required to play any given permission. So let's take that centre back in a 3-2-1 where we're playing really attackingly. They're being left at the back by themselves regularly. So this could be a player that's unbelievable at defending 1v1 and we want to really stretch and test him or her and give them that challenge appropriate to what they need. So actually they can cope being attacked 1v1 regularly or being attacked 2v1 regularly. Or alternatively, it could be a player that we've kind of identified that needs to work on their 1v1 defending. So we know in the 3-2-1 or the 1-3-2-1 that centre back's going to get loads of chances to practice their challenging and defending matched up or defending in overloads. So that's just considering how a formation, even though it can have the same 1-3-2-1, could be played slightly differently and how it can actually impact individual players. So we can consider that to see how we can help our players flourish or challenge them in the areas that they need to be challenged in. Okay, so again, in the 1-3-2-1, if we think of like a really technical player that loves to get on the ball but struggles with the game physically, they're really good in possession in central midfield, but out of possession, they really struggle, and actually to the detriment of the team sometimes. So when we talk about observing to help performance, this could be an example of that. So they're outstanding in possession, but we really struggle sometimes, and they struggle when they're matched up against bigger players. So a formation here, by playing a 1-3-1-2, can we play that technical player centrally, but also put them in centre midfield with another player? And that way, they've got a partner, they've got a bit of a bodyguard so they can really showcase their skill set and bring that out, but also the team and that player have that little bit of protection at possession to help them adapt and start to develop in that area. So again, that's just another example of how a formation can be used to support one individual. And this is something we need to consider at all times with formations. And just to illustrate what we brought out right at the start, this is a 1-3-2-1. In the top right, you'll see that that's as it was on the last screen. In the bottom right, you can see what it looks like if we were to play that in a defensive manner. Totally different. All the players back really narrow, really compact, hard to break down. And then in the bottom left, there's that example of us being really attacking in a 3-1-2. And my screen's really small, sorry. You can see number 3 green at the back is isolated by themselves. So if we lose the ball, this player here, number 3 green, is going to be defending, and they're going to be defending at minimum 1v1. And that's absolutely great. If we understand that, we know that's going to happen, and we're pitching that challenge appropriately for that player. So on to 9v9. We have a 1-2-4-2. We have a 1-3-2-3 and a 2-3-3. They're the three most common ones. And actually, this is for 9v9, the rock, paper, scissors one for me really suits this, because a 3-2-3 really, really hurts a 2-4-2. And a 2-4-2 really, really hurts a 2-3-3. And the 2-3-3 really hurts a 3-2-3. But on the flip of that, they all damage each other as well. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, but rock, paper, scissors analogy fits really well on the 9v9 ones. So the makeup of your group is key to selecting a formation. Any playing philosophy can be brought to life in any formation. So your team can press really, really high or defend really, really deep in any formation and everything in between. You can play out from the back, or you can be really direct and anything in between in all formations. The one thing we probably not addressed yet is the quality of the opposition. I know Brent's referenced it. Whilst we always promote that development mindset over results, there may be some contexts that require you to move away from your preferred philosophy or style. So an example might be a county cup game or a cup final, something where you might be playing against a team that are ranked a lot higher than you, and you may need to adapt your philosophy within your formation to suit the needs of that game, to protect your players, possibly to maybe defend a little bit deeper, to counter attack, to protect them in situations where you might be playing against top opposition. So that is just something to consider. And again, just to bring to life there, we're in the 1-3-2-3. The bottom left is how it looked on the last slide. The top right, if we're pressing really, really high up the pitch, and then the trade-off is that there's loads of space in behind us. So if an opposition chooses to miss the red section out and keep playing into the yellow section, that could provide a challenge. And then bottom right, a team sitting deep to counter. All of the green players in their 3-2-3 formation are captured inside that red box, really deep, really narrow. So now there's no space in behind, and that opens up space on the sides, where in theory, if we can force the ball there, the opposition should be less likely to score goals. Okay, so again, that's just bringing to life how individual formations can look and fit and be different depending on how you ask the players to play within those formations. So, problem solving, coach observations and problem solving. You're all already doing this as coaches, and you know more than you probably think. You don't need to be a football expert for this, and we can prove it. So there's a little scenario here. You've identified the best player, which we identified in the first 5 minutes. You've identified the opposition's best player. The player is right-footed, but plays on the left wing, and their strength is cutting inside and shooting. What would you do? Does anyone want to stick a solution to that in there, or think to yourself, what would you do in that situation? Right-footed player, playing from the left, and they keep cutting in and shooting. Any solutions to that? Okay, Mark Winter straight in. Show them outside, onto their weaker foot, and not only onto their weaker foot, away from our goal. Okay? So you might have thought that. You may have other solutions. That's just one solution. That's the one that was in my mind as to kind of, that'd be the one that we come up with. So yes. Oh no, my slide's not moving. There we go. So again, there we go. Matt Wise has got a different solution, having three in midfield to cover and step in and protect the inside. Brilliant. Great idea. Give the left double up with the CDM. Perfect. So great solutions. Thought to my other defenders to push across, create a 2v1. I wish I hadn't clicked the slide across so early now. Some really, really good suggestions there. So again, everything we do tonight is not one size fits all. So great solutions that I'm hoping you've come up with. And for me, the first one was the one I had in mind. So number 2, do not let that opposition number 2 cut in. So you need to show them outside and away from the goal. So that is how we could solve that individual situation. How you as coaches decide to solve the problem, that's down to you as coaches. So do we immediately, it happens once, hey, what you doing? Show him outside, show her outside. Or do I allow the player to learn and log those experiences? Do I wait 3 times before correcting? Do I approach them in a command? Show that player outside. Or do I ask them, that player keeps cutting inside, what could you do differently? So although we might identify a solution, the skill of the coach is how to then translate that information across to your players. So over to Brent again.
Yeah, so yeah, like you said there, do you stick or twist? It's exactly what Tom mentioned there. It's highlighting the the issues that are going on in the game, and then deciding kind of what are you going to do in terms of how you're going to deliver that. It is difficult, I'm not going to lie. You know, some games it's fast and it's furious. I know sometimes on the match day you can sometimes as well be even more conscious about what parents are seeing you do as well in terms of the players. But obviously, as the coach, you know, it's your role to kind of observe and try and deliver the right message at the right time to the players as well, in terms of how you deal with what you're going to do on the pitch. On to the next one for me, please, Tom. So yeah, so not everything requires us to solve it straight away. So a few things I kind of noted down here is allowing ownership of the players to problem solve under pressure. So, you know, you've trained all week, you've probably drip fed some little nuggets to players, maybe some individuals on what you maybe want from them at the weekend. So giving them the chance to kind of try and own it, you know, try and problem solve themselves. You know, you'll find sometimes they will surprise you as players as well. And actually using those breaks quite productively. I know Tom mentioned about getting himself, you know, getting his emotions in check with a co-coach. It's actually quite a nice time for the players to do the same. They're the ones who ran around frantically as well, for them to get a drink, regulate, and actually you can maybe even put them in a direction and go, actually, what is the problem? Maybe ask them, you know, what is the problem? What are the strengths and weaknesses of the other team as well? If it's a team you play regularly, depending on the games program you have, if it's a team you've played regularly or the week before or something, can you even start to get them involved in the process of how you may play against them the next time you play, or this week as well? Yeah, developing resilience by supporting players through tough experiences. So again, you know, we've all been there. One of your players, it's hard to watch them kind of really suffer against maybe one of the opposition's best players, or someone who's quicker or stronger or has different attributes to them. But again, it's just poking and prodding them and giving them the tools to maybe work out how do they solve the problem. And actually, by them going through a tough spell, that will develop their resilience. You know, as sport as is in life, isn't always easy, and you're not always going to get it your own way as a team. And it actually does develop the resilience for the individuals. Trade-off to subbing and rotating positions based on the performance. So again, if you take it back to the one above, in terms of someone struggling, you just take them out of it. One, they're not getting the learning in terms of that position. How do they overcome that, the struggle they're going through? But also in a game, and I know obviously I can only kind of go from our experiences relative to Derby, we would play 4 periods of a game. And in terms of positions, you know, I would certainly look to only really play a player in 1 or 2 positions, no more than that, because what you want them to do is each period is get used to a challenge, come off, have a breather, have a chat. How are we going to solve it? How are you going to support them through it? Then they can go back and have another go at that challenge. So if I have a player who comes off and I've asked them to try and beat their opposite opponent, but then I move them somewhere else, they're not getting the same challenge to beat that opponent that I've just asked them for. They've got a different challenge now. The game essentially for that player has changed simply by moving them position. Sometimes that's out of your control if the other team move players as well, or move formations as well. So some of this is in your control, some of it isn't. But that subbing and rotating within a game sometimes can hinder the performance as well. And then coach behavior is linked to this. So things like language, team talks, utilizing subs on and off. So talking about language, and I know Tom's already mentioned it, what is your face saying, you know, to the players? Does it look like a coach that's supporting the players? Is it someone that is ensuring that they will be creative and don't have a fear of failure in terms of trying things on a match day as well? Because that's how they'll develop. Body language comes into that, as well as obviously language. So again, things like, you know, what can you see? Just little questions as they're on the ball. What can you see? So you're not telling them to look up. You're not telling them to pass. You're not, you know, controlling them like a PlayStation controller. You're just giving them little prompts so their eyes come up and then they can make decisions based on what they want to do next. Team talks we've kind of mentioned in terms of sometimes it might be us, sometimes it might be them. You might even put them in little pairs depending on time you've got as well open to you. Have a little chat with your teammate. What are the things that we're doing well today, etc., and then bring them back to the group and let them own it, let them feed back to everyone. The smaller groups just means that everyone has a chance to speak as well, rather than, as you know, your players, you'll kind of get them all to have a chat in a group, and the ones that always talk will always talk. Whereas if you break them down to those little smaller little groups into pairs, at least then they either have to talk or they have to listen, and they're probably more confident speaking their mind in those smaller groups, and then you can feed it back to the group. Utilizing subs is a big one as well. So when you're playing a game and you've got subs there, so rather than them maybe booting footballs in a goal somewhere away, can you bring them in? Can you bring them along? Can you start to think about, well, you're going to go on up front, have a look about, what's our striker already doing that's causing them problems? What are the defenders doing? What are they really good at? If you're going to go and play against them, how are you going to get some success against them? Are they quick? Are they strong? Do they read the game well? So you're starting as a sub, you're starting to get into their mind of what they might then try and do when on the pitch. I know at the Derby I had a little board with them. Our philosophy was, like many academies, to try and play through the thirds, try and play forward, run forward, the usual. And we kind of had just 3 things. So when the subs were on the side, they would have, could we score? Could we go from back to front? So could we get the ball from our third into the final third and score? And if we scored, you'd put a little tally mark. Could you win it and keep it? So that's pressing from the front. So can you win the ball in their half and then score within 8 seconds? A little tally mark if they can do that. And the other one was a simple 1 or 2 touch finish. So those are things that kind of align with our philosophy, but it also gave the players on the pitch something to aim for, but the subs as well, something to recognise. So again, if we did it really well, the team at the half-time break or in the break, we could kind of go look at the tally. Look what we're doing really well today. Look at the goals we've scored. It's done that. Have we managed to go from back to front? Have we managed to do these things? So it kind of brings your philosophy objectives to life, and your subs are involved in that as well. And then development versus the result. So like I've already touched on, again, what's the language saying in terms of that fear of failure? Again, if everything's based around the result, no matter what they've done, if it's all based around the result, they'll think we lost, therefore it doesn't matter what I did. It's irrelevant. Whereas actually looking at the effort, praising, what they've tried to do, how they've tried to play, both as individuals, as a team, outweighs the result. And just the emphasis on effort and all those things is a really big thing for especially younger players as well to take on board as they go through. Yeah, so we've got a few examples here, kind of similar to kind of what Tom had. So we've got a winger of slight build, he's very quick, usually gets a lot of success, but today's up against a very quick defender and who's also bigger and stronger than. What choices do we have? And we've kind of already touched upon it in terms of, do we leave them to kind of suffer? And this is where knowing your players is really cool, because what you can do in that game is you can actually give them time to suffer, but then take them from one wing to the other. So you might notice actually they might get more joy on the other side. So again, in that one game, you might go, right, you stay on that side, get a bit of struggle, but then actually we want to finish the game. Let's give that player a bit of success now, because we don't want it all game, depending on the player and what you want from them. So then you might switch them to the other wing and go, right, you're going to get a bit more success against maybe a defender who's not as quick. Example 2, today's game played majority of their games at centre back, so they're one of the best performers at the back. They're struggling with their scanning, receiving. So again, because they receive it from the back all the time, playing that as that central defender, the ball always comes from the goalie, and everything's in front of them. So the game's in front. So you've literally changed the range that they've got to look at. So if you talk about our key capabilities of players that we look at, by putting them in midfield, they're going to struggle because they've got a 360. The ball's going to be coming from lots and lots of different areas. And it's knowing that actually that player needs that. If you give a player simply centre back all the way through their journey, you're kind of doing them a disservice that they won't be able to play anywhere else. And actually what you want to be able to do with players is give them a lot of variety, so it is in later years to come, they've got more tools in their box. Plays up front quite often, good strength, receives the ball well with their back to goal, wins majority of their duels, but lacks movement to create space for themselves. So choice for this one. So it might be in a game you've got. So it might be actually this player you play and you explain to them, right, today you're going to play up front, but also you might play at the back. So by playing them at the back, what they then experience is the striker against them. So then at the end of the game or during the game, maybe in the break, you ask them, well, what was difficult for you against their striker? What did the striker do to lose you, to make it very difficult for you. So it kind of gets them in the mindset of, I didn't like it when the striker did double movements, or when he pretended to go somewhere, went somewhere else. So by thinking about the things that they've just experienced by playing at the back, then if they go back up front, they can start to do them and try those things on opposition players and teams in the future. And then example 4, you notice from goal kicks, every time the left centre back receives the ball, they're uncomfortable on their left side and they pass back to the goalie to their right. So they never look at going forward. So they literally get the ball and they just always pass it back. So again, it's just them. Do you keep them there? Do you let them keep struggling? Because obviously if you're noticing it, will the other team notice it as well, that they don't ever go forward with the ball? Are they missing and turning down passes as well? If your philosophy is to play forward and run forwards. So again, it's just kind of giving them those little kind of challenges within games. There, you might switch them from one side to the other again. So you might leave them there to struggle, but you might go, right, we're going to put you back onto the other side, and now you are able to drive out or play forward now. So you're getting that challenge and you get success as well.
Also,
and obviously all these are kind of one takes. Like you said earlier, there's not one size fits all. These are different ways to deal with these things.
I think again, just it's the little soft skills that then the expertise that Brent's bringing there. Some really interesting points, and the slide a moment ago with the bullet points on. I'd really encourage you to reflect on that maybe in a week's time and just go back through and just consider some of the stuff that Brent mentioned, because yeah, it's that real kind of fine detail and those little small moments that you can have with your players that make a massive impact. And again, I want to reiterate what Brent just said there. There's some scenarios and some solutions, not the solution, and that's really important. I know there's a few bits in the chat. I will try and get to them in the chat, or maybe we'll speak about them towards the end, but I am conscious of time and I don't want to steal any time from you. So we're going to move on to some real life examples of how as a coach we may observe and problem solve. So really want to just hammer there that we're forcing this for the purpose of this workshop, that we've observed something and we're going to fix it. So it's happening consistently. There is a problem and our players have been unable to solve it themselves. So before we go into that, just consider games will not always be as organized as these perfect examples, and that's fine. Football is football. The game's the game. Give your team chance to buffer and problem solve it before before we act and we start to implement our thoughts on the situation. Can we coach our team to resolve the problems? And there may be times where we have to resort to command to resolve problems. So they're just things I want you to consider before we do move on. Right. And again, one last thing on this, actually. We do have limited scope to influence players, and I think this is really important. When the game's going, it's 100 miles an hour. We might have all the solutions, but we cannot be commentating. Brent's covered it. We cannot be commentating over the game. A player's brain is working hard enough just to process the information that they're seeing, feeling. Your noise in the back of that is only going to make them play worse. So it's just really, again, just to note that we can't make vast changes whilst the game's going on. That's very difficult. Okay, so we're going to run through now some real life examples. We're going to look at the problems and some possible scenarios and how we might coach that. Sorry, this door's going to go a few times just whilst they're coming in and out. So 7v7 situation. On the slide now, we have a 1-3-2-1 versus a 1-2-3-1. We're going to coach it as if we're the 3-2-1, the 1-3-2-1. So the spaces we'd expect to see are in the wide areas, the red areas, based on those 1v1 matchups there. We have an overload in the yellow rectangle of 2 midfielders against 1 centre mid, and our striker is underloaded up top. So again, we'd expect to see space in wide areas, depending on where their wingers and our wingers position themselves. That will dictate. Okay, so on to the actual problem. 1-3-2-1 versus a 1-2-3-1 out of possession. Our team are struggling to steal the ball back high up the pitch. And again, we've got a retreat line in this game. So a couple of possible solutions for your team. You can encourage your striker to try and trap them into one side of the pitch so that they can't use their 3v1 that we identified on the last slide. So they can't use their 3v1 against us. And how we might do that as a coaching strategy is at half time, or if you're in periods, 4 periods after 20 minutes, privately speak to one of your players or the striker, talk to them about how they can position their body, what they might do and why. Also use the whiteboard to show them. And then as part of the team talk, we could then, as part of the team talk, get them to present to the other players in the group as to what they're going to do, and then use that as an opportunity to ask players what they might do off the back of that. So as you can see on the top of that photo, the striker is coming out and forcing them into one side. We now should know, as their teammates, the ball's going to go into the side that they show to. Can we then go and hunt and look to steal that football back? Okay, so that is how we might pitch that to our team and solve that problem for them. I would then ask, as Brent mentioned, how we might use the subs to observe or to monitor that, to count how many times we steal the ball back out the pitch. So that was one way of doing it tactically, or using individuals. Alternatively, we could challenge one of the centre midfielders, so our two centre midfielders, to almost press as a striker. So as you can see on the diagram underneath, rather than one person going and pressing, we could send two people to press, and that should negate the numbers that they have and give us a greater chance to win the ball back high up the pitch. And again, how we would coach that as a strategy, I would speak to the centre midfielder privately to give them their little secret mission, to give them their task. I would show them on the whiteboard what we expect to see, and then we would present that to the team. And again, we would set that wider team challenge. How many times can we steal the ball back high up the pitch in the final third, and get the players that aren't on the pitch to count how many times we can do that. Okay, so that's an example of changing the shape to impact a fixture. Right, spare me. Sorry about that. Okay, so on to a different problem. A 1-3-2-1 versus a 2-3-1, playing out from the back in possession. So we're struggling to play through the thirds. Our team are not able to get out. So we've come in 2-0 down. We've given the ball away. It's led to goals. We've not got too emotional about it, as we said earlier. So we're struggling to play out through the thirds. So a couple of possible solutions. Encourage your players to play centrally where they have an overload. So we've identified on this slide back here that we have a 2v1 in that yellow square. So we could encourage our team, play centrally, try and pass through the centre of the pitch where we have more players. So pass through the centre of the pitch where we have more players. Again, as a coaching strategy, I might need to show my team on the whiteboard, here's our formation, here's theirs, and ask them questions. Where's our overload? Where are we underloaded? Where's the space? So highlight to them, there's a 2v1 there. Can we try to pass through? And again, I might then privately challenge the central midfielders to see. I might challenge them quietly away from the other players. How many times can you two connect and combine with each other in the next 40 minutes? And again, I might use my subs, or I might do it myself, or I might just review it with them. I might ask them, how many times can you combine with each other, to challenge them to really go and get on the ball, go and influence the game. So that's one way of solving that, by using the shape that we have and challenging the players tactically to go and play through the centre of the pitch. An alternative approach for that could be that we ask one of our centre midfielders, when we're trying to play out, to drop out as a second centre back. So as you can see on that bottom slide, we're in a 2-3-1 essentially now. So we've given up our overload in the middle of the pitch, but we've gained an overload deeper. So if we have been struggling to play out, that could be a way tactically that we could solve that problem as a coach. And again, for a coaching strategy, I would have to speak to the centre midfielder, be conscious that if you go in centre mid and I'm now asking you to drop in as a centre back, the mindset of the player. So you're coming in, you're going to be our ball carrier, you're going to be our playmaker. So can you get on the ball and help us get out? And then also maybe need to show the wider team on the whiteboard the position so that they understand what to do. So again, one way of solving it by helping the players understand the overloads on the pitch, and one way where we change the formation to help us solve the problem. No right way, no wrong way, just two solutions. I'll do one more before we move on. So again, one final 9v9 situation. We have a 1-3-2-3. playing against a 1-2-3-3. And this scenario is how we press. So we've come in, we found ourselves 2-0 down at half time. The formations are shown on the screen. So we're the black team in this situation. So we have an overload in the middle of the pitch. We're matched up, our front three against their back three, but actually we're overloaded at the back. We have 2 to deal with their front 3. Okay, so and the space in the red areas is the danger areas. That's where we're weak and they're strong. So we've identified that through our observation. The space for them is high and wide. So we've come in 2-0 down because the opposition continually are kicking the ball long into those red zones. And the times where they haven't been able to kick long, they've played out short and then quickly played into those danger areas around us. So we're really struggling. They're getting into those areas. I'm going to pause there and just say, does anybody have any solutions or any ideas of how you might stop that? So the opposition are exploiting us in the red area where we're really, really weak. So are there any solutions? And whilst I wait for that, I will apologise for the lighting effects that were happening behind me. I have 2 of the most immature colleagues, not of the county FA, I have to say, who were creating a light show behind me there, which was quite annoying. So any ideas on how we might solve this problem of them getting that ball into the danger area all the time, those red zones? I'll give that 30 seconds. I'll try not to do what I did last time and move on as the solutions come in. Just while I'm waiting for any solutions that may come in. Matt Wise, assume you'd only look to change formation at half-time. Absolutely. Only in those moments where the game is broken up. I wouldn't be trying to swap shapes and stuff whilst they're playing, because it just simply, unless you've got an 11v11 team that are really highly drilled, that you could literally say, stop playing that formation and play that formation, and they could do it. Yeah, I would only do those in moments of in your breaks in between. Midfielders to slide across. Okay, so you're saying one midfielder could drop out and pick up that winger to counter the attack, get the wingers to drop. So brilliant, we could drop back, love it. Pull the CD, I like that. So pull your CDM back and create a back 3 to match their 3 up. Great idea, Stephen. Top solution. One I haven't thought that one. And I played 9v9 for the last 4 years. I thought I'd seen it all, Brent. Okay, so excellent. Some really good solutions in there. So possible solution 1. And I'm going to deal with the 2 problems that we identified consecutively. Number 1, they keep kicking the ball long behind us, and we don't want that. We want to win the ball high. So I could advise my team to drop further back as their start position when the goal is got in their hands and when it's a goal kick. So can you drop further back from goal kicks to force them? You're almost daring the opposition. We dare you to play short, because if you kick it long, we're all here. So your solution to this problem is to roll the ball out, which is what we want. This is one of those situations, though, where we might solve that problem and cause ourselves another problem, because we've said when they've played short, they've still got around us. So possible solution, and actually, I can't remember who said it about dropping one in. Stephen Fuller's solution could be equally as effective. So possible solution 2, we're going to advise our wingers to press, but they're going to show inside. Okay, so if you look at the diagram on the bottom, our black number 7 is going to jump and press, but they're going to cut the line pass off. So they're not going to allow that red arrow pass. That should funnel the ball into the middle of the pitch where we have 3 players and they only have 2. So not only are we stopping them going to their spares, we're forcing them to come to where we're strong. And again, I would look to, as a coaching strategy, probably pull my wingers, speak to them about this is your challenge now. Speak to the midfielders about this is going to happen. They're going to try and force the ball to you, and I want you to try and steal the ball back. Challenge them. How many times can you steal the ball back in the next period? And again, I'd probably look to show that on the whiteboard and do that to the wider team. So there's just 2 more solutions as to how we might solve that, and then how we might get that information across to our players. They're not the only 2 solutions. There are loads of different ways of doing it. What we've tried to show you is how we identify, possibly solve a problem, and then how we get that information across to the players. There is one more. Because of time, I'm not going to go through it. It's fairly straightforward. It's similar to the first one I did, and you can review that when you get the slide deck. Okay, over to Brent.
Yeah. So talking about position specific learning, and one thing I suppose we've not mentioned, which I might mention here again, is a lot of these formations, but take it back. If you think about 25 years ago, when I was growing up watching football, it was 4-4-2. Everything was 4-4-2. You had two strikers, pairs in midfield, pairs at the back, and you had your winger. So I suppose if you look at Man U, Neville and Beckham, everything was pairs. And now everything's 4-3-3. So everyone's playing as, and if you'd have said that then, I'd never believe you. So if you look now and think about, especially at the younger ages, what you're preparing them for in terms of the pictures. So if you go back to the 7v7 and the 1-2-3-1, the 1-3-2-1, and then the 1-3-1-2. Again, it's, are they playing in pairs? Are you preparing them for what the game might look like in 10, 15 years? So at the moment it is 4-3-3, but in 10 years, 15 years, what's it going to look like? And if we only prepare them for what it is now, we may again be doing them a disservice of them not playing in a pair in the midfield, not playing them in a pair up front, etc. So by giving them a variation of things, that should hopefully support their development. So matchday targets, back to specific learning. Theme of the week. So what does success look like? So, if you've had a week looking at certain things, whether that's how the team's going to play, individual things, that's something to have ready for a match day. So certainly an objective for them to work towards. Certainly would look at in possession target and out of possession target, and then a consistent philosophy of messages. I think, at Derby, we used to have these three here. So what are we working on this week? Right, today, this is what we're going to look as a team. In possession, this is what we want to do. Out of possession, this is what we want to look to do. And then philosophy messages. So it might be something like be hard to beat, or let's not turn down a pass to play forward if it's on. Something simple that can be measured as well, if okay, because then obviously what you can do with your subs is get them on to kind of mark stuff down in terms of whether we do it or not. Player position cards. So these are things you can make up, yourselves in terms of what you expect. And I remember we had back when I was at the FA, we had these for in possession, out possession. So again, it depends on what you want in terms of responsibility for your players in those positions. So it might be they have cards, and today you're going to play, you give them this card, this is what you're going to do. So as the central midfielder, this is what we want you to do in terms of be really hard to beat. Can you play on less touches today? Because that might be a challenge for them individually or the team. Can you look to assist, play forward if it's on, those kinds of things, really. And then who do they need? So again, so relevant challenges for the players to think about, for them to look at. And then who they need to link with. So it might be that they, on this position card, it says, make sure you support the striker when we have the ball. If the ball's ahead of you, you support the striker. So again, by seeing you need to support the striker, you then may have a conversation with the striker or link them together and go, how are you going to help him today or her today in terms of how you're going to play? So position cards works quite well in terms of giving them sometimes ownership to kind of go and have a look at what they need to do. And actually, you might sometimes not even tell them. You might give them the card and see what their interpretation of it is first, and then maybe support them. Different challenges are different ways you want to get your message across.
You need to move on, sorry.
Yeah, next one, please. So individual learning plans, development plans. So these are things that, especially at Derby, we had. So every player had their plan. So we kind of tended to sync the whole week based around certain players. So if we had, 15 players, we kind of go on a rotation. So it might be 3 players this week we're looking at. So training games would be based around them in terms of you build the session for them and then link everyone else in. So you kind of know with the end in mind where they've played in training games across the week. They're roughly going to play there at the weekend in 1 or 2 positions maximum in terms of what you want to get out. So you kind of linking that to either their strengths that they've already got that you want to see more of, based around the position, based around the opposition, if you know that stuff, but also sometimes what you're looking to get them to improve as well. Your target players, which we'd call them, could be primed. So you could say, look, this week I'm going to look to play you here because I would like to see you do more of this. Is that all right? Yeah, etc. So you're kind of priming them, getting into the mindset of why, and you give them that explanation. This is why I'm playing you here today, because this is what I want you to try and do. And it kind of gets that buy-in, and then if you start to link it to, their favorite team or favorite player and go, this is what they do. And actually today, I want to see if you can do a bit of that today. I think you'll have loads of opportunity, and just getting that buy-in from them. And sometimes linking that with the parent as well, parent and player going, look, so-and-so is going to try in this today. And this is what you're going to see a lot of, and just kind of involving the parents sometimes as well. And like I've said, I've already kind of touched on that, plan around them in terms of the sessions and the matches. Decision making, technical and decision making development. So again, the emphasis I've already touched on in terms of praising that effort over the result. Okay, that is really key in terms of going all the way through. And always like when players are picked up by parents, etc. And the first question is always, what was the score? And again, it's always difficult to come back from that, because if they lost, it means everything they've done is kind of redundant. Like, you know, they may have played really well and lost, and we've seen it at all levels of the game. You can play really well and lose games. You can play not so well and win games. So that emphasis on actually what they do, where they played, what they were asked to do is really, really important in terms of questioning as well, from, you know, coaches, but also parents as well, if you can try and instill that in your clubs. Reinforcements, so positive reinforcements on what they do well. But the key word with that is specific. So it's, if it's something, you know, they've done well, that I really like how you disguise what you're going to do and then beat your player. Brilliant. So now they know exactly what you were praising them for, the disguise, rather than just a well done, Bobby, or well done, Ellie. Like, you've done, they don't know. So players always want to please. And we'd obviously touched on this before in one of our other sessions. But if you can give them specifics of what they did, they'll want to keep doing it over and over again. They'll want that positive reinforcement. And then prompts rather than telling them. And I kind of touched on this earlier in terms of just little prompts that you might have with them as you are, in terms of like, what can you see? So that helps them lift their eyes. Is it skill or share? So it's a question. So is it skill or share? As they're driving through, are they going to go, they're 2v1? Are they going to take them on themselves when they've got a spare player? Are they going to play the player in? Are they going to pretend to go themselves and play the player in? Different things like that. I would always ask as well after that. So in that situation, if they make the wrong decision and shoot and miss in the player spare, it's first question would be, not necessarily there and then, but at some point during the day, is kind of, what did you see? Because if they didn't see their teammate, then it was never a choice for them. They just thought they had to shoot. And that's where you can kind of get the learning from. If they say, oh yeah, I saw him, but I chose not to pass to him, fair enough. Okay. If you had the same position, might you do something different? And that's where you get the learning. They might still do it themselves, but they might go and play, actually, this time I'd probably pass to them. But that key thing is, if they don't, you don't know if they saw them or not. And the first question's got to be if they saw them or not, because it's make a big, it's a big point in terms of whether it was a choice for them or not at that time of it happening, which is sometimes why not to jump straight in as well. So again, the big debate about why rotate positions, and we've kind of touched on it a bit now in terms of, especially the young players, you've got to give them a variety of everything. So that engagement with them, if they know who's going to play up front every game, or they're going to play at the back every weekend, the game's fun, the game's random at football, and you want it to be varied for them, but you also want to develop them in loads of different things. Someone who plays in centre midfield is going to get a lot of scanning, as we've touched on already, a lot of 360 movement, a lot of agility, and that's what everyone should get as well. So their scanning is going to be brilliant. It's going to have to be, because of what they do, and you kind of want everyone to get a bit of that. The same way with, you know, everyone, I say everyone, a lot of players like finishing. You do a finishing week, you do a week on finishing, but there's only 2 or 3 players going to play there. So if you play centre back all the time, when are you going to get the chance to finish? When are you going to get the chance to take players on? So all the things you do in your program, if you do ball mastery, if you do passing, you want it varied. Someone who plays at the back is only going to play short or longer passes forward. What about the combinations of 2-player, 3-player core moves combining with others? If they only play in one position, they're not going to get all these different capabilities and not going to develop them all. Which brings me on to the second one in terms of the key capabilities: timing of runs, you know, movement off the ball, a deception. So what does deception look like at a centre back? What does it look like as a forward? What does it look like as a winger? It looks very different in those different positions and different formations. So again, allowing them all to have a go at them all is key for their development. And then experience and challenge. So again, attributes tested in different situations. It also allows us, so if you go back to what I said about the striker who played up front, and actually by putting him at the back, it allows him not only to develop as a striker in terms of what he needs or she needs to do better, but actually when he's or she's playing up front, they can actually have an idea of what it's like to be a centre back. So when they're thinking about their teammate who's playing centre back, they understand what they need to do. If they're caught out of position, that they will maybe run back and cover. So that kind of empathy of understanding what roles and responsibilities are like in other positions, against, again, what their attributes are, is really good for them to kind of see and learn. Oh, match day. So have a plan. So I mean, I don't know, this is more for me, but I think some of these are the key things in terms of arriving early. I think, like most of us on the call, match day can be chaotic. Having a plan, arrive early to complete tasks, because anything's going to happen. You might get phone calls, people running late, people not turning up because they're ill, etc. So arriving early to set up, whether it's the change room, the pitch, the warm up, whatever it is, just gives you a lot of breathing space to deal with anything that comes up on the day. Having the team planned out. So this used to be my Saturday night thing. So for a game, so I'd plan all the positions and the minutes for everyone, the tasks for the subs. I'd probably have a couple of plans. So ideally, I'd have in my mind across a week where everyone's playing, and the 4 periods we'd play was what we do on a Sunday. We'd play 4 periods, so I'd know what each period looked like. Ideally, if everyone plays, no injuries, everyone turns up, all those things. So I had it in my mind, but also a backup one. So if so and so didn't turn up, I knew where someone else might play to help the balance of the team as well as the individuals as well. It made it a lot easier than on the day to kind of go with the plans and having it there. The task for the subs as well is always a key one in terms of keeping them engaged. One thing I haven't touched upon, and obviously if you have the roll on, roll off, I've utilized that in the past where I need to get a message onto a player, and rather than waiting 20 minutes or whatever till the break, actually, can I sub him off? Prime one of the subs. Can you just go on for a couple of minutes while I speak to one of the players, have the chat with them, right? This is happening at the moment. Can you try and do this? And then sub them back on. So that's another way of utilizing the roll on, roll off kind of subs situation that you have in your games as well. Team talks, so pre, during, and post. So have them planned. So I know before we've touched on it, team talks, what we want to do. So it's themed around the week. Individuals I need to go after before, in terms of having a little one-to-one conversation with them about what they want to see. During, so again, talked about what it might be a group one. It might be I want to go into pairs. It might be I just have one of them where, do you know what, the captain on the day, because I'm doing something on them in terms of their social, their leadership, right? These are the points I've got. Do you think you can deliver them back to the group and then go forward? It might be that based on what you want. And then post. So again, at the end of the game, is it right to speak straight away? Do you want them to just chill out, see the parents first, go back into the change room, do it then? Does it need to be long after the game? What are the weather conditions saying, etc.? So there's loads of different ways to kind of plan how to get those things across. And I think those things just help match day just flow a lot easier, because there's a lot of chaos on a match day, a lot of things to think about. So if you can just kind of have a few things done, then that hopefully helps you focus on the things you need to in terms of the game day and the players in your care.
Oh, sorry, I was typing.
Okay,
just based on what Brent said there, just about planning and managing minutes and understanding the benefits of playing across positions. I'll send this out on the follow-up email. I've created an Excel sheet. I did it. I'm not sad. I didn't just do this for this. I did it months ago. We use a system, or we used to use a system called PMA, which for us as coaches logs all the minutes that our players play and in what positions. So it's a really good tool for staying on top of that. So it's just a call to action, really. I'm going to attach it. There's no strings attached. If you'd like to try it and use it, go for it. Try it, use it. Feedback to me if it's not working. I'll tweak it. Share it with us at your clubs. But it will just be an Excel document where you can input their names and then game by game input the minutes and the positions they played, and it will count it all up for you. It will count all their minutes. It will count their average minutes per game. It will tell you how many minutes they played in each position and the percentage of time spent in each position. So if you are a club that are saying we provide equal playing time and we provide equal positional play, this is a great way to stay on top of that. And we're never saying we're not saying it has to be equal all the way through the season. It'll have ups and downs where I might play up front a little bit and then I play midfield a bit. We're not saying it has to be 33% across the season. It just needs to balance itself out. So that Excel sheet's free of charge, yours to use. And if you don't want to, absolutely don't have to, but it will be there. I mentioned someone a moment ago. I've lost it in the chat. There's a few articles here, and one is around, I'm sure one of these is dealing with parents, but if it isn't, I'll put that on the follow-up email. Also, And just a reminder for those of you that are still here, pretty much all of you, if you haven't already, please scan the QR code and go to the register. And make sure you've logged yourself. If you can't access that, please make sure you've written your name in the chat so I can tick you off and make sure that your attendance gets logged. And just before I open up to questions, because I realise we've gone over, so I'm going to use the questions bit at the end to wrap up. Just a reminder, we do have a couple more workshops penciled in. The next one is around planning for the individual. I'll do a poll on the follow-up email because of how much time we spent focusing on the individual in the original in these 3 original workshops. We are going to open that content up a little bit wider to something else. So we'll get your feedback. So please do feedback on some areas that you would like us to deliver on. Get yourself signed up in the usual method. We have some face-to-face events coming up. The Winter Series Core Moves one is fully booked. Winter Series 2 and Winter Series 3, they've both got 2 spots left. It'll be Gary Webb delivering on one and myself on the other. We have a foundation phase-specific one and a youth development phase-specific one too. The goalkeeping one that I referred to last time, my deliverer is cancelled, so the new plan is January or February. I will get that on, and the man you can see on the screen there, Gary Webb, is sorting me out some goalkeeping CPD in the very near future to plug that gap too. So I should have some announcements on that in the very near future. So a huge thank you, because I do appreciate we've gone over a little bit tonight. We've tried to cram a lot in, and your feedback as always is really valued. So please do complete the feedback form, and I'm going to click my way back now to use the chat or raise your hand, and we're happy to answer any questions that we can in this time. But again, thank you very much for your attendance tonight, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. But any questions, we're here, we're staying on.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because it's a battle between us and Monday Night Football.
No, Spurs are winning.
But I've seen quite a few about players and parents and positions and them being taken out. And I think if you're having, I mean, if we're still having the debate now around, someone like Jude Bellingham playing, is he a 10? Is he an 8? And I know he's a superstar in terms of obviously professional. If we don't know him, how can we know in terms of players where their positions are? So I would keep to stick to your guns in terms of rotating. And obviously you don't want to rotate for rotating's sake in terms of playing players everywhere. They will more than likely have attributes that suit areas of the pitch depending on formations and formats you're playing. But yeah, stick to it. And ultimately you're trying to develop their players by giving them a broader range of experiences in the game rather than just them going through and just playing centre back, centre big, centre mid, striker, because would the parents want them to have 2 or 3 routes into a side or just one route into a side? Because you might have one route in and the other player's much better, or as you get older, and actually having more attributes in different ways in is much more valuable. I'd
Brent,
say.
it's probably a good time to mention, why is he number 22?
Oh yes, it was because he played, was it 10, 8 and 6, wasn't it?
He played as a 6, he played as an 8, he played as a 10.
Through, yeah, you could play more.
So is that right? Yeah, 6,
yeah.
Or was it 4? 4 and 8 and a 10? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's 22. Yeah, your maths. Yeah, 4, 8 and 10, I think it was. So yeah, you could do it all there across his development all the way through. So that's kind of where they gave him that number, and now you've seen it, if you like, and that's one of the best. So
yeah, for those of you that are still on, yes, as always, you will get the slide deck, you will get a copy to the recording. I know the last recording was a nightmare on that link, I had to redo it, but yes, you will get a copy of tonight's slide deck, tonight's recording, the links I've mentioned, and a few people have requested some player cards. I'm gonna have to dig them out of my old laptop, but I know I have some from some old courses, so I will try and attach them for you as well. I'm trying to look back through the questions.
you can see
but
again,
I've lost a lot of them.
wanted the Suns to play one position, centre mid only. I'd kind of ask them, why? I'd kind of ask them why. What does it benefit from playing one position all the time? It's like going to school and doing one subject. It's one of those.
Yeah, no, I think you've really got to work hard to sell the value to the player and the parent of why are we doing this? We're doing this to develop you. We're doing this to develop these sets of skills. So you will need to play there, but you'll still get time to play your position. Right, we've got a few questions coming in. Paul Crossley, my only issue now is playing my best centre back in centre mid where he wants to play, which can detriment the team at times. That is a trade-off. That's a real tough one. I think someone mentioned earlier about being quite smart with the games that you pick and choose, and I'm a big believer in this, that target certain games where you know that player can play, and actually you might be able to cover it off, because let's be brutal. You could say we're doing well and we're playing bottom of the league. That might be the game he plays centre mid, but actually we also need to not hide him from the realities of football. So we need some opportunities for him to go and play centre mid against those tougher oppositions. And they might be the ones where they play 50-50 or 60-40 and they start the game at centre back and move into midfield for the second half. So it's just about being clever and planning that. And that's why those trackers that Brent's mentioned and I'll send to you are really valuable, because you can check as you move through the season, actually, I'm not fulfilling my promise here. He's only playing 30% and I need to get that up. I've had to do the same with the player over the last 3 weeks. Circumstances killed me a few times and he's got stuck at centre back, but I've really worked hard to build the squads and the teams to plan that player's minutes, to get them minutes at centre back to rebalance that book. So by tracking it over the course of the season, you can ensure, and again, if we're talking about, look, we can't hide, there's been a lot of complaints about parents there. You can just go bang 50-50. So you can moan, but actually over the course of this season, your child has played 50% centre back, 50% centre mid. We'll never remember really the specific games, and that's your skill as a coach to plot and manage that. And I'm a big believer in that, whether that's right or wrong.
Yeah, I think priming it as well is important in terms of how you sell it to the player and sometimes the parent as well, if the parent's involved, in terms of the plan is to do this. And like kind of Tom said, sometimes the plans change, and that's it. You've got a plan, and sometimes plans do change. I think that's kind of one of the mantras I had with the players and the parents. I said, look, I'm going to plan for this, but you're going to understand that sometimes someone is ill. And so the plan was to do this. However, someone's ill and that happened. So this has happened today because of this. But yeah, having a plan and just kind of priming them, saying, look, today, this is kind of what we're going to look. So yes, I know you want to play midfield. Initially, just kind of want you to play here, because you're going to help so-and-so at the back, because, you know, you're really good at you building into those leadership skills. And then in the last period, the plan is, just in case it changes, for you to go into there. So hopefully you can look at your scanning and playing forward, blah, blah, blah. So you've covered yourself if it doesn't happen, which ideally it does, but then also you've also got them on side because they're getting to do what they want to do, but they're still doing a job for the team initially as well in that game. Matchday targets. So I've got matchday targets here, unless I've missed some. I don't know if I'm missing some.
I'm trying to answer some.
I'll let you be compared. Go through the
So yeah, Claire's just asked about how often do you change the targets. I've just put in there, the context is key. Your players, knowing your players, knowing how they operate, what they kind of what they respond to. So just for under 10s this year, we use the same match day targets each week because it's all linked to how we play. And then what we'll do as coaches is individually nudge, challenge, motivate, give players target areas to work on throughout. So it does just depend. Again, it might, if you're working on a block of work at training that's very similar over 4 weeks, you may then use those targets for a consistent period of time. If you're changing topic week to week, you might want to utilize different targets each week. Sometimes you have consistent targets that stay, and actually out of the 3 targets you give, maybe 2 are fixed and 1's specific to training. There's loads of different ways of doing that. I don't know if you've got any thoughts, Brent.
Yeah, I think ultimately with targets, I think the one thing you can't control is the opposition. You may know about them, so you may have targets that stay with you because you want to see if they can do it consistently. They've done it, a target, and hit a target once. But sometimes a target, you want to see if they can do it over and over. So again, can they be hard to beat? Can they play through the thirds against a team that is much stronger and quicker than them this weekend? And they might have to find different ways of doing that. So again, the context is against who they're against, what formation you're playing, individuals, and you can always give extra targets to others that need it. So there's one target that might be consistent just for the group, but you might have 1 or 2 players in there go, look, this is the target for the group. However, I'd like you to try and do this as well this week if you can. So everyone's got a target, but you're then pushing those ones that are able to have a little bit more as well, without taking anything away from everyone else.
that's probably something I didn't hammer home enough during the slide deck around the opposition. We may change things, and then the opposition may counter our counter. So it is a constant battle.
Yeah.
Right, let me just see if there's any other questions that we've not picked up. For matchday target, oh, that's the one we just read. Would you still rotate a player even if he loves playing that position? I think we've sort of covered that with the negative ones, but this is kind of a positive example. But we really need to sell the benefits and help that player understand why we're doing that. And also, there is an element of fairness, because I'm struggling at the minute with my group. We have a lot of central players. Unfortunately, your child won't always be able to play there because I've got other players that love playing there too. So there's that side of it as well that we can, that's probably one to have with the parents. But also you talk to the player about sharing those positions, because actually there's other people that want to play there too. But yeah, that one again is shining a light on, well, okay, you're a centre mid, but we're going to stick you on the wing, so you get to work on your 1v1 dribbling skills, for example, because we want you to improve in that area. Because if you want to be a top centre midfielder like Jude Bellingham, you've got to be able to handle the ball and beat players 1v1. Brilliant. So there's just different ways to kind of sell it to the players. You've got to be a salesperson in those moments, right? I'm trying to just scroll back through the thank you ones in case we missed any questions before. We have battles with parents all the time. Yeah. I think when we're giving players challenges and stuff, that can really help to negate that. Go on, Brent.
Yeah, I think it's the attribute. So again, it's what does a central midfielder look like in a 2-3-1, like by himself, and what does he look or herself, and what does he look like in a 3-2-1? So you've got straight away you've got two instead of one. So again, that kind of block of work, you might then do the first format as a 2-3-1, 2-3-1. You've got one central midfielder, and the roles and responsibilities of that one midfielder are going to slightly change if you have two of them in there. So it's about knowing kind of what you want from them, what you're going to see from them in there as well, and then sharing that around the group really as well. So it's really thinking about what attributes, and the key, I keep going back to him, but obviously the FA do a really good job, and obviously the core moves, but the key capabilities are really good things to look at. I think they're a big thing that supported me when I've done a few of the courses in terms of an observation tool for players. Going to test me down trying to go through it now. Is it try to develop more skillful players, isn't it? So technique, timing, trying to develop deception, movement, positioning, scanning.
There you go, you nailed it.
So those six things. So if you're looking and observing players, look at those six things. Really, what are they like at those things on the ball, near the ball, away from the ball, before the ball's played to them, after the ball's played to them. It just, because that's what you're looking to develop in all players. So it might be, you're looking at the movement here, but the movements of a centre back in a 2 is totally different to a centre back who's by himself. So again, these are little things that you can kind of use as coaches to develop them. And ultimately, that's your reason. You're not lying to parents. You're going, look, he or she's playing there because I want to develop this part of their game. That's why. And if they don't like that, then that's fine. That's up to them, isn't it? But as coaches why you're doing what you're doing and why you're trying to develop players. Any more we've missed?
I've just answered one just around looping parents in on the challenges that players have, and I just said it's a really good way to engage the parents. And actually, I find that's a great tool to keep parents concentrating on their own child, especially if you've got those ones that may be quite chirpy or are forthcoming with their opinions. If we can get them to focus on their own child and not everyone else's, that can be really beneficial too. But it's just a really good practice idea to give a child a challenge. Go and tell mum, go and tell dad, go and tell whoever's with you to look out and count how many times you do X, Y, or Z. Definitely. Last season, we're under 13, playing 4-4-2, attacking style. Had to adapt the season 4-5-1 with the CDM to block midfield of opposition in higher league. Next step, getting us to X-Place, counter-attack when it's on. Any advice on this? So we could be here a long time to advise you on that. But in short, the two things that stick out for me are, okay, you need to help your team be compact and understand their defensive shape. So lots of work on getting compact. We need Peps to do this because Peps is Italian. So this is right up his street. Sitting deep to counter-attack. So being compact, rest cover support, protecting the centre of the pitch, And then the flip of that is when we get the ball, we need to do loads of work on attacking quickly, counter-attacking, speed of attack, exploiting space to get in behind. So they're the two things that stick out for me, but also there'll be work to do with your players around why are we doing this? So what are the benefits of sitting deep? Well, the opposition come onto us, the space in behind, we're going to go and exploit it. This is how we need to do it. We need to be quick on the counter. But also everything we've said tonight, does that suit your players? Does that who plays where? How do we then start to put players in positions to help them develop? It may help them develop defensively. Are we sacrificing some of the in possession stuff because of that style of play? These are all trade-offs that you have to ask yourself. I don't know if Brent's got anything to add on that.
I think you've nailed it there, really. I think you've nailed it all. I just kind of want to go back on the parents one before. I think it is interesting to bring them in because it's one of those, and I know you mentioned like dealing with parents. It's basically bringing them on the journey because they are probably the biggest stakeholder in the football. No matter what you coach them, they're going to go home in that car, and some of them are going to get probably talk about the game after, talk about the game before. You need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. It's hard, but just kind of informing them of what you're doing, and it's a fine balance because what you don't want is you don't want it to be another task to every week. You've got to explain to everyone what every kid's going to do every week. That's not sustainable. But at the same time, you want that open channel. You want to be open and honest and transparent with them. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're trying to do here with your son or daughter, with the team. So I definitely wouldn't be a hands-off, like, don't talk to me. But at the same time, I wouldn't open yourself up to be doing it every weekend because it just become too much. And ultimately, you don't want to promise things you can't, which is why I always go back to our plan is this, because that's the plan. And like anything in life, plans change sometimes based on things that are out of my control. So yeah, bringing them on board. And if you can now and then say, look, this is what we're looking at doing today, or here's a block of work, even the syllabus. I think, at Derby, we were quite open. This is the syllabus. This is what we're going to be working on. So you'll see this every 6 weeks. These are the things we're going to look at. This is what we value. This is why we wouldn't, everyone's got a code of conduct. So I imagine some coaches on here will have parents who do coach from the side. All of them would have signed a code of conduct with your club. And sometimes they might just need a reminder of that in terms of what's involved in that, in terms of instructing and the downfall to doing that as well. But yeah, I definitely work with the parents, should I say, because that will certainly benefit you. If you can get them on side, it certainly will benefit you as a coach.
Yeah, just this will be the last one. We probably should get offline soon. Just mention about the really stubborn parents that just are not having it. I've just put, what's the alternative then? So, my son or daughter only plays centre mid. Okay, so you're guaranteed 50% of your time, let's say, in centre mid. Do you want to play the other 50% of minutes in another position? Or do you just want them to not play? Because that is the alternative. All things being equal, got 16, 17 players to manage here. Your choice is 50% in centre mid and 50% helping out or playing on the wing or playing as a fullback or up front. The alternative is you don't play. Well, obviously, we don't want to do that, but that with really stubborn parents, we may have to present that as the alternative. I cannot give that player more minutes because I have to get players X, Y, Z minutes there too. So unfortunately, this is the choice. 50% is centre mid, 50% playing in an alternative position. I'm not saying they're the exact figures, but you may have to present that to the parent as well. But yeah, it's tough.
This is what team sports educate everyone, is that it's a team. You have to be selfless sometimes.
Thank you for watching. If you are interested in any of our upcoming Sheffield and Hampshire County FA coach support events, please visit the coach support page at sheffieldfa.com. Thank you.